Hey art nerds, we have a really involved drawing tutorial today. Today we're going to be decking our halls and celebrating the holidays and drawing a gingerbread house. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I never had much luck building my own gingerbread houses, but drawing gingerbread houses seems to be something I can handle quite well. So I am drawing today in a Blick Studio watercolor sketchbook. It is a larger sketchbook, and I'm going to start by drawing a straight line. This is going to be the ground where we kind of set our gingerbread house. So as I'm working on this, I have reference pulled up on Google Images. I Googled gingerbread house, and I'm taking inspiration from several different gingerbread houses that I saw on Google Images. Whenever you're drawing something that you're not so familiar with, maybe you think you know what it looks like, but you want to double check, or if you need a little bit of inspiration, I highly recommend working from reference, working from photos, working from other people's drawings. Don't just copy, but let them inspire what you're doing. So I started by drawing two lines curving outward. Those are the lines, those are the sides of the house. And I drew the roof on top of it. And the way I found the center line for the roof is I drew an X from the top of one side to the bottom of the other, and the same in reverse, and that gives my middle point, and then I just drew a line upward to determine how high I wanted to draw the pitch of the roof. So now that I have the basic house shape of my gingerbread house drawn, I'm going to start drawing in some of the details. So for example, I sketched in a thick gingerbread roof. And next, I'm going to sketch in some candy canes supporting this roof. And I just want to apologize for the focus issues that my camera's having with this illustration. I'm working with a new camera and I'm still figuring it out. And just like when you're learning any new skill, there's going to be a bit of a learning curve to it. But I feel that the best way to learn how to do anything, the best way to get good at anything, is to practice and make mistakes and take risks and put yourselves out there. So after I've drawn two candy canes upholding the roof, I'm drawing a curved door, a door with an arch at the top. You can draw whatever kind of door you want. Gingerbread houses have triangular doors too, but I thought the curved doors were the cutest doors. Next, I drew a circle above the door. That's going to be our window. And then I thought it would be really cute to draw two orange wedges on either side of our circular window to act as shutters. So if you're referencing gingerbread houses, you'll notice that like gingerbread men and gingerbread women, I guess gingerbread people in general, they are bedecked and bedazzled with candy and icing and so much sugar. So the more opportunities I have to draw icing and candy and sugar, I'm going to take them because it's a gingerbread house. And the holidays are all about that kind of wonder and magic and sweetness, I guess. So on either side of our door, I drew two smaller windows, and then underneath the windows, I drew a cookie window ledge. Above the windows, I'm drawing little round candy, so I have one larger candy, then two smaller candies on either side. And you can decorate your gingerbread house with whatever cookies or candies you want to draw. You could use an Oreo for a window. You could use a peppermint for the door knocker. You could use gumdrops all over the place. Speaking of, I'm going to draw large gummy candies, large jelly candies, kind of like the peach jellies, to be stepping stones. And then above the door, I'm creating an icing bow. And around the door, I'm making a rim of icing. And really I know none of these are literally the things I'm describing. So basically I drew a bow shape. I drew 2 triangles with a little box in the center and then 2 tails coming out from either side, curling upward. I drew a circle in the center of the door, or in the top center of the door, which would represent a candy cane. And then around the door, I drew basically a door jamb, which is going to be made of icing when we're tightening up the details. So basically at this stage, I'm just roughly sketching everything in. I'm not drawing any tight details. So I want the roof to have gumdrops, but I'm drawing what's going to become some icing first to look like snow dripping off the roof. So the bottom of our house is looking pretty empty right now. I'm going to draw some small circular candies at the bottom of the house, kind of like stones at the bottom of some people's foundations. And I'm going to draw a gumdrop path kind of flanking either side of our gummy jelly candies. So set into our snowy icing, I'm drawing several circles representing round candies, kind of like Sprees or M&Ms, or Red Hots would be cute. And then I drew a smaller circle around the window, as well as a crosshatch to serve as the window panes. So at the top, I'm drawing these hump-shaped objects that are going to later become our, not jelly beans, gummy bears, gumdrops. There we go. Sorry, I don't know why my brain was having such a hard time with that. And when I think of gingerbread houses, my favorite gingerbread houses are the ones that are just covered in fun, brightly colored candy like Candyland candy. So I wanted to bring in some more detail and kind of create a scene. So I wanted to draw some cookie trees around our gingerbread house. So I'm drawing 3 triangles, one on top of the other, starting with a small triangle at the top, and then just drawing progressively larger triangles as we work our way down. And this is a really simple way to draw fir trees. I also drew 2 hook shapes all the way at the end of the gumdrop path. Those are going to become candy canes. So now I have my base drawing sketched in. It was very lightly sketched in case we need to just go at it with an eraser and fix things a bunch. Next, I'm going to go in and tighten up those details, straighten some of those lines, and add in some additional detail. Now, since I'm going to ink this, I'm not going to tighten up all the details totally in pencil. I'm going to save that for when I'm inking. Basically, I'm tightening it enough, like it's like doing solving math problems on a piece of paper and I'm showing my work. I'm just tightening it up enough so that I understand what's going on when I'm inking it. So to make our gingerbread door cuter, I added scallops to the icing. And really that's just little humps, little bumps, little half circles, all about the same size going around the door. I also decided to draw a tiny little Kara peeking out of the gingerbread house mirror, not mirror, window. I know she's too big to have let herself in through the front door, but that's okay. That door doesn't work anyway. I imagine Kara just took the whole back of the house off and climbed in playhouse style and is now peeping through the window. Of course, you don't have to draw this, or you could draw your own character peeping through the gingerbread house window, or you could draw a gingerbread person peeping through the window. It's really up to you. And I'm going to add the same scallops to the window that I added to the door. So this is where having some reference images that you can look at and refer to and see how things actually look, not just how you remember they look, because we misremember things all the time. We misremember details. We forget details. So having those reference images that you can look at while you're drawing is really helpful at this stage. So the white sheet of paper that you see me using is basically a blotter sheet of paper. It's just to prevent me from smearing the graphite all over the place. And I'm just going to work basically from left to right, adding more details, creating the illusion of frosting, and just kind of tightening up the piece. Like I said earlier, my point isn't to have this like perfectly rendered illustration fully drawn out in pencil before I start inking, because I'm going to erase the pencil anyway. Really, I want to put the least amount of time necessary into my drawing and then spend that time instead when I'm inking it and when I'm coloring it. So when you're making art, especially when you're making like comic art, for example, you want to be as efficient with your time as possible. And that often means figuring out what steps you can skip and what you can comfortably do in, say, ink rather than in pencil. And when you're new to inking, you're going to have to draw everything out, because you're new to inking and you're not that comfortable with it yet. But the more you ink and the more time you spend inking and the more time you spend drawing objects from reference and then inking them using that reference, the more confident you're going to get in not only your inking but also in your drawing, so the less work you're going to have to do at the drawing stage here. So something else is that gingerbread houses use a lot of candies that are very round. So you have like M&Ms and Red Hots, and you have like peppermint candies, and you have lots of gummy candies, and you have gumballs, and all of those are very round objects. So it's very easy to just kind of sketch them in. I don't know about you guys, but I personally find drawing softer, rounder things much easier and much more natural for me than drawing harsh angles. But that probably varies from artist to artist. So for the tree cookies, we're not actually going to keep all of the triangles we drew. We're going to merge that into one tree shape. We just drew those triangles as kind of a starting point. And then I'm drawing icing. And the way I'm drawing icing is I'm drawing it very curved, so there's no sharp angles in the icing. And it's also inside the cookie, inside the original triangle shapes. And unfortunately, it will make a lot more sense when I'm doing it in color. So something else about gingerbread houses is that icing is used to glue everything together, from the joins where the walls meet other walls, so those corners, to gluing on your candies, to drawing your windows or drawing decorations on the house. Icing is used for pretty much all of that. And icing can come in any color, and you can draw your icing in any color, but I want it to look white and snowy, so I'm going to be doing white icing here. And I kind of drew like, you guys know, like bubble letters. This is a lot like writing bubble letters. When you're thinking about icing, think about bubble letters. I wish I had thought to say that sooner, because that, I feel, really explains it. And most people have doodled bubble letters in a school notebook or on lined paper, or, when practicing writing their names. I'm also drawing, and I'm so sorry about my camera losing focus. I know it makes it hard to see and it makes it frustrating. And I promise you guys, just like y'all are practicing your drawing, I am practicing with my camera. I'm drawing my icing kind of dripping down to look like icicles or like snow dripping off the roof of a house. Now, having grown up in Southeast Louisiana, Snow is not something I've had a lot of experience with, but I did live in Nashville for a few years, so I did at least get to see some snow. But if you are like me and you are a southern bird, reference, reference, reference. So this is one of the most involved drawing tutorials I've done outside of my comic drawing tutorials, which, speaking of, if you're interested in learning figure drawing or perspective or drawing comics in general, I've got some great playlists for you guys that I think you guys will enjoy. And if there's ever something you want to see how I draw it, you want me to walk you through how I draw it, let me know. I would love to hear from you guys. You can either reach out to me through email, you can join me during one of my Power Hour live streams, or you can join my Discord server, The Paint Box, and I'll make sure to put a link in the description down below. I'll also link all the materials I used for today's tutorial. And speaking of, this is just the first part in a two-part tutorial. The second part, where we actually color our gingerbread house, is coming up soon. So now we have our gingerbread house sketched. It's time to ink our gingerbread house. And today I'm using the Tombow Furinosuke brush pens. These come in a variety of really bright, fun colors, but the best part is that they're alcohol marker and waterproof. So no matter how I want to color this thing, these have got me covered. I'm also using a Sakura Pigma FB, the black pen, and that is to ink the black parts of this image, with which there are not going to be too many. And it is also water and marker proof. So what I am doing for this illustration is I am using the color of the object, or what I think the object's color will be, and I am inking it with that color. And then in the shadows, I am using a darker variation of that color. So for example, we have a red gummy candy in the middle ground. And to add some shadow to that, I used just a little bit of purple on the two ends closest to our white icing snow. And for our icing, I am using, it's supposed to be a neon blue, but it's really more of a sky blue, and it works really well for inking things that are supposed to appear white without adding too much color and too much contrast. Now, if you guys look closely at gummy candies, you'll notice they have, for the most part, especially the ones covered in sugar, they have this uneven, glittery surface that the sugar coating gives. So I'm using little jagged zigzag lines to indicate that. So for the candy canes can come in whatever color you want. I just bought a box of pink, blue, and green candy canes to go on my Christmas tree. But for this illustration, I'm just going to go with traditional peppermint. So I've inked the main body of the candy cane using that same light blue that I'm using for the frosting, since the main body of a candy cane is white. And then I am inking the red stripes on using a red pen. And then I'm going back and I'm inking over the sides where the red would be. And isn't this kind of like zebras? Are zebras white horses with black stripes, or black horses with white stripes? Are candy canes white candies with red stripes, or red candies with white stripes? So for this gingerbread house, I want to have a lot of fun, and I love drawing and coloring candy because candy can be so colorful, and you get so many different textures, and you get translucent candies that you can see through, and you get opaque candies that you can't see through, and you get glittery candies that catch the light. And candy's just fun to draw. This is not the first gingerbread house I've drawn, if you guys can tell. I just really like drawing gingerbread houses. And I worked a summer job where it was a freelance summer job where I was drawing a lot of holiday themed stuff for wrapping paper, and the gingerbread house was my favorite of the things that I drew. So this is definitely channeling that gingerbread house. They're just so fun because you can really just slather on the cute details. So to deck our trees, I'm going to draw red hots. So little round circular red hots. And then I'm going to ink the frosting using a green. And boy, my camera sure wants to focus on the back of the brush pen and not on the paper. Oh, silly camera. Then on the outside of the tree, I'm going to ink the cookie, the gingerbread cookie, using a dark brown. So like with my flower tutorials, I start with the objects that are closest to the viewer, and then I draw the objects in the background after I finish that. So basically, as things overlap, I start from front and work my way back. So on the gingerbread house, I'm starting with the snow, and I'm using that light blue pen to ink the snow. So the rose on the door is in frosting, so I'm using that same light blue pen to ink the frosting. And I'm adding just a little bit of shadow with a darker blue pen. We have a red hot door handle, so I'm inking it with a red pen. And then we have a peppermint window in the door. So like with the candy canes, I inked it in light blue first, and then I went in and added the red stripes. Since this is a gingerbread house made of gingerbread, I do want to use some brown here and there, even though most things are covered in frosting. So I used the dark brown pen to ink the arch of the door, and now I'm using the red pen to ink our frosting bow above the door. So the key to inking using local color, or the color that the objects are going to be, is just taking your time, thinking it through, and having a good idea of what you want your finished piece to look like. Now the plus side to this is when you're coloring it later, a lot of your work has already been done for you. You've already thought about what colors you want every object to be. And you don't have to stick to that color. If another color works better, just go ahead and color it with that instead. You can always ink it again later, or ink that area again later with a color that works better. So inking Kara peering through the little bitty window is pretty simple, mostly just black, brown, with a little bit of red and light blue, with the light blue being her teeth and the red being the underside of her mouth. Now I'm using an orange brush pen to ink our orange slices. And I'm going to use just a little bit of red just to kind of create some shadow. Now, that's a technique you can do. You can use as many colors as you want on something to indicate color. So for example, let's say we have a ball and it's a red ball and the light's hitting it from the top. We can start with yellow at the top where the light's first hitting it, then go to orange where the light's kind of diffused. We can use red for the main body of the ball itself, and then use purple way down at the bottom opposite from where the light's hitting it to indicate the shadow on the ball. Or you can just ink the whole ball red, varying the pressure. So when you're holding the brush pen, if you just very lightly hold it, you're going to get a really thin line. And then as you press down on the pen, you're going to get an increasingly thicker line. Where the light is hitting the ball, you'd have a very thin line. And then on the other side, where the ball's in shadow, you could have a very thick line, implying that that line is part of the shadow itself. Or you can do what I call a dead line weight, where there's no line variation at all and it's just the color. It's really up to you, the materials that you have, and what you feel comfortable doing. And of course, you can always add additional details as you go. Once you start inking, you don't have to stop adding details with pencil, and you don't have to just do them in straight ink if you're not comfortable drawing or inking them first. So it's all about your comfort level, what you feel comfortable doing, and what you enjoy doing. It's great to try new things, and it's fantastic that YouTube and the internet and art books inspire people to do things with their art that they never would have done before. The only problem is when people start comparing themselves and then they find themselves lacking and then they get depressed about it. So I really hope that my videos, with all their flaws, are inspiring and encouraging to you guys and make you feel like this is something you can do. So for the roof, I wanted to put in gumdrops, and you guys remember I just kind of sketched in these hump shapes. So now, kind of like I did with the gummy candies down on the path, I'm using little bitty zigzag lines to draw the sugary part of the gumdrops. And this is something that is going to come across way better when we add the color in the follow-up tutorial. And I varied the color that I used for the gumdrops. You could do them all one color, you could do them alternating red and green, but when it comes to Christmas, I want all the colors. So, of course, I did all the colors for the gumdrops. So now that we've inked our foreground and our middle ground, it's time to ink our background. So that means the two trees in the background. They have icing on the top, so I'm using the light blue brush pen. And then I'm going to use yellow and orange on the taller of the two trees to ink the ornaments, quote unquote ornaments. I guess they'd be like M&Ms stuck into the frosting. And I'm going to use the orange just to ink the bottoms to create some shadow, and also because the yellow tends to get kind of lost, especially when I scan these. And then I'm going to use green to ink the frosting. And speaking of scanning, if you just want to color this image and you don't feel like drawing it and inking it yourself, I have line arts available that you can purchase, and you purchasing them helps support this channel. There's going to be a black and white version as well as a color version available on Gumroad, so check the description down below. But if you're one of my amazing patrons on Patreon, first, I wanted to say thank you guys. This channel does not see any sort of sponsorship. We don't have a corporate deal. NordVPN doesn't pay me to talk about hiding where you're at. So it's just me and my patrons. So this is only possible thanks to their fantastic support. And one of my ways of saying thank you to my patrons is that my line arts for these kind of tutorials are shared to my Patreon free. So if you're one of my patrons, you have the line art for this free. So now that I've got everything basically inked, I'm just going in here and there with different colors and adding in some shadow. And boyo, is my camera not happy about that. My camera's saying it's time to be done. So for like the light blue icing, I am using the darker blue just to ink the underside here and there, and that creates the illusion of shadow. I'm going to do that on the candy canes as well. Now on the green, I'm also using the blue just to create a little bit of shadow. But otherwise, we have our gingerbread house basically inked. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you feel inspired to draw your own adorable gingerbread house this holiday season. It sure is easier than baking a gingerbread house, right? Don't have to worry about the cookies breaking as you're assembling it and then crying. Ah, that would be me. But speaking of gingerbread houses, I have a gingerbread house kit that I want to assemble during one of the chill streams. So I hope you guys will look forward to that. So I allowed the inks to cure for 24 hours before I erased the pencils. And then I'm going to add color on top of it. So I hope you guys will keep an eye out for that.